Welcome back to TAO Talk, where we dive into the ebbs and flows of BitTensor. Chutes has processed 10 trillion tokens and is now funding startups. Quantum breakthroughs are happening right now, and we have the perfect guests with which to dive deep into TAO Treasury companies. I'm your host, 563, joined by my co-host, Brody. Today, we're pumped to have Karia from XTao and Ken from BitMind. Gentlemen, welcome to TAO Talk.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome. It's good to see you guys back. Karia's first time on the show. Ken, no stranger to the show. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Been busy, I'm assuming, over the past few weeks, months, setting up XTao, all the sorts.
Yeah, definitely. We've been working on XTao, I guess, since October, November, Ken, something like that. But it's definitely been a bigger push, I'd say, in the last few months. So yeah, but yeah, things have been good.
It's finally live. Started trading last week, so really grateful that you guys made the time to come on. I know, Kara, you've been making a huge media push. I feel like I've seen your face on the timeline everywhere, doing streams and stuff. So thank you for taking the time to hop on and chat about these vehicles with us. I think these things have been, very important in driving flows towards Bitcoin and ETH over the past few months. Obviously, Bitcoin and ETH have been performing really well. So hopefully, this can serve as a similar catalyst for TAO. And, we're excited to kind of see these things come online for a couple other altcoins as well, Hyperliquid among a few of them that have, been purchasing a substantial and meaningful amount of assets off the market and creating that exposure opportunity for institutional investors. So it's cool to see we're doing it with TAO.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting too, because I feel like before the wave of crypto treasury companies, obviously there were public companies that held crypto, like Bitcoin miners and other companies like that. And I feel like they were more exposure to non-crypto investors. It was, this is how a non-crypto investor can invest in Bitcoin is, buy or Marathon or something like that. Now with these crypto treasury strategies, it is also that, but then it's also like major participation from crypto VCs and everyone that's like long term on them, and then also using them for kind of arbitrage and other opportunities. And so yeah, it's kind of this convergence of both types of investors into the treasury strategy. So yeah, really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think one thing that's also really interesting is just like with these TAO treasuries specifically, it's also exposure to AI. I think like a lot of people are looking for that type of exposure in the public markets and the private markets everywhere. And these vehicles are popping up that I think is a differentiator from some of the Bitcoin, ETH, and maybe some other these crypto public holding companies.
But I do feel like it's hard. So I totally agree, and I think we need to be hammering on that more, the AI exposure piece, because there are so many treasury plays that I feel like BitTensor can even get lost in the mix of like, oh, it's another piece. But I think it's a great point yet. And then obviously we don't need to dive immediately into this, but I think we started as TAO not as a treasury company. That was never the play for us. It was creating a publicly created validator that does useful work on the network that we can continue to grow. And I think to me that's always to me that's just more interesting, like as like operators. And you also have the treasury, which is complementary to the validator and other things that you can do from an operational standpoint. But I think it just creates more of a high growth opportunity in my view.
Love it, man. Awesome. Yeah, I know we have a ton to go through for XTao, but let's hop into the weekly news. I'm excited to get your guys' take on some of this stuff. We had some top movers come through, and this week, really to be a top mover, you just had to not be negative. So Ridge's AI top leaderboard here, 65% gain on the week. Really some great shipping, honestly, just shipping nonstop. And then went on Novelty Search last week, and I guess people really liked what they saw. And it always seems like every week there's this one outperformer that pops into the top 20, and Ridges was this week. So love what these guys are doing. IOTA also on the list here, getting closer to a working incentive mechanism for the pre-training network. Really would love to see. I'm excited to see some like competition with Templar and on BitTensor for pre-training. So I'd love to see IOTA getting some love there. And then yeah, PTN with the least negative return for this week, -1. Yeah, now requiring collateral for their miners, so miners have to put their money where their mouth is. But yeah, how are you guys been holding up amongst all of this?
I think we're in the southern hemisphere because subnet summer is actually subnet winter. So maybe we'll get subnet summer in December, because this is a southern hemisphere inverse play. That's that's what I'm telling myself.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, right? You now have a lot of these top subnets have a decent amount of liquidity. I think like Chutes might be over 100 million worth of liquidity, and it requires some significant capital to move those markets. And then you have some new incumbents like Ridges and some other teams that are coming out with really exciting products, but it still is, right, extremely vast. There's over 128 of these assets, and I think it just will take some time for the market and investors to navigate the space. I think what I know a couple people visited us in Austin last week that were like interested in alpha tokens, and you know, when you meet someone new that's entering the ecosystem, talking to them and you're explaining to them, like, I think we live and breathe it, but it really is just a massive ecosystem. And so I think that's my take. It will take some time for folks to be able to understand it.
Yeah, and I feel like obviously some people will just get in that are, you know, high risk and feel comfortable with what they understand about it. But I do feel like there's, maybe I'm biased by kind of the folks that I talk to, but it feels like it's people still generally feel like, you know, it's early days for subnets, which I think it's, you know, it's a positive thing. I think there's like so much growth already, and there's so many exciting things that are happening. But in terms of capital allocation, I do feel like we're just at the, you know, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on it, but I feel like we're just at the very beginning of it. So it's great to see some of this growth already, and I think it's just gonna grow more from here.
Yeah, I definitely do think it's early, and I think people who are used to trading crypto are used to things moving very quickly and people catching on to trends very quickly, but larger institutions are very slow at adopting new tech. So I can totally understand those larger allocators wanting to see how this plays out for the most part and being slow to allocate to these, what are really high risk projects, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, right. I think there's been a ton of interest in TAO and BitTensor in general, and folks are getting in, but it's a much different proposition saying, I'm going to get exposure, buy allocation in TAO versus do research and make investments into the subnet alpha tokens themselves. Even if you're interested in BitTensor and you're saying, hey, I'm going to get exposure to the top X or this one or two different subnets, that is very, highly concentrated exposure. And so you're now starting to see different capital allocators get in, and there has been a lot of interest in alpha tokens. I think the open question now is, what is that strategy going to be? Who will be successful in that strategy, and like, can anyone, copy off of or emulate the playbook of these successful alpha token investors?
Well said, man. Yeah, let's get into this week's headlines. I think there's a lot to go through. Yeah. So the qubit tensor. They achieved 37 qubits over on subnet 63. This is the quantum subnet. I'm not going to lie, a lot of this stuff goes over my head, but from what my initial research anyway, on centralized simulations, those supercomputers are able to reach like 50 to 60 qubits on like I said, centralized supercomputers. But this is 37 still a super impressive number, because on most open source simulations, we're getting closer to like 30, 34. And you have to remember, every qubit you go up, it's a 2x for how complex it gets. So it doubles the complexity every time. So 37 is actually quite impressive from my limited understanding. Yeah, how do you guys feel about quantum technology being on BitTensor right now?
Let's see. I also feel like I'm not an expert to discuss this topic. Quantum computing is extremely deep, not only deep tech, but hard tech. It requires a lot of very impressive hardware. And so I don't understand it. I think it's really cool. It's interesting that it's capturing market attention. But yeah, I kind of have no idea like how to ascertain the legitimacy of it. I would be really excited for them to go on novelty search, or I would love to like learn more about it and to do a deep dive on them, or like hear from some of the folks that are working on it. Yeah, it's unclear if like, I know that they potentially came from a very impressive quantum computing background, but still not clear from my perspective.
Was that announced today or like in the last couple of days?
Is
This was like,
a week ago?
yeah,
A week ago. Yeah, I guess it's to me, it just shows the versatility of BitTensor. And again, like obviously need to be verified. And like Ken said, it would be super cool to hear or like hear them kind of like talk through it and like dumb it down for non-quantum folks. But yeah, to me it's just another show of versatility of what can be built on the network, which is cool.
And the nice thing is, holding TAO is basically just, you have exposure to all these different little angles of AI and technology. So you have exposure to some quantum research that's being done, which is kind of cool. You can't really say that of other assets.
Agreed.
Awesome. Another highlight for last week, Chutes passed 10 trillion tokens processed. Huge milestone for the Chutes team. And yeah, they're just kicking on all gears. So they expanded their payment options, so they have monthly subscriptions. And I think you can even just get like a lightweight selection for free models. They're moving into consumer applications powered by the platform. So you can imagine, once those consumer applications get spun up and running, you can use that revenue to buy back some Chutes Alpha. They're also working on TEEs and secure compute for those enterprise adoption sides too. So I've been very impressed with the Chutes team, as we've talked about them quite a bit. And yeah, apparently they just dropped like huge code base update as well, so they can start having like specialized jobs like model training and fine tuning on Chutes as well. So really impressive. I mean, it's that infrastructure play before you can get those specialized compute use cases on top of it. So well done from the Chutes team.
Karya and Ken, question: do you guys have any, or will you guys anticipate that you will begin to accrue and purchase alpha as a part of the XTao strategy somewhere down the line, or how do you think about diversifying and kind of capturing access to the long tail, specifically with a lot of these subnets that have proven themselves, such as Chutes and things that are in the top 10?
Yeah, I think we have to. It's a bit of a balance. The goal really is to be the most trusted sort of institutional exposure to TAO, and so we don't want to be a hedge fund and providing access to super high risk subnets. But at the same time, obviously, they're the lifeblood of the ecosystem, and there are there's so many great opportunities there. So definitely we'll be incorporating subnet tokens into the strategy. So we're just kind of working on what that looks like and criteria and things like that. But yeah, Chutes is certainly a personal favorite as well.
Yeah, man. And staying on the Chutes topic, they also announced that they're offering $20,000 in compute to startups. So really cool use cases, honestly. Like targeting startups, you would imagine that are going to need a ton of tokens, but I think it's just a great way to break into the startup scene. Just say, here's a bunch of compute, go use it, go build on top of us.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome to see subnets like this that are implementing like great sales strategies. Like they're just looking to acquire customers and kind of bringing in really smart approaches like that. So I feel like that's a great, to me, that's like as good of a signal as anything, when you see things like that being rolled out by Chutes.
Yeah, and Ken, speaking of like customer acquisition, how do you feel about that from like the subnet owner perspective? Has it changed at all since going to TAO, or how do you think about like getting a hold of customers now?
It's definitely changed a lot. The main difference is now a focus on revenue. And I still think it is a balance that you need to find, right? I think traditionally, especially in some of these fields where there is a lot of competition, you first focus on distribution and then you try to figure out a way to get, conversion to paid users. And now I think a lot of the teams have been extremely focused on, hey, how do we get to that second stage? How do we get to the conversion of these paid users? So you've seen like Chutes turn on payment, Targon turn on payment for their inference, and it's still a combination. But what Kari said, it's really forcing subnet owners to think about strategic go-to-market strategy, customer acquisition strategies. What is your marketing angle? How are you going to communicate to retail? And I think that's been one of the good things about TAO is this hyper focus on user acquisition and getting external revenue beyond subnet emissions.
Yeah, totally agree. Awesome, man. Well, there were also speaking. I feel like this is just a Rayon Labs podcast at this point, but Gradient's V5 dropped, completely revamping their mining initiatives. So it's more of a tournament style competition now. So I think this is a really cool idea. Miners have to publish their strategies in an open source format. So there's no longer this black box, like where you don't know what the miners are doing to fine tune these models in a specific way to outscore everybody else. Now it's all in the public. I think that's better for like the open source software community. It's better for publishing. You can get all of the miners' ideas on one page and you can see and compare and contrast and they can learn from each other. And I just think it's great. So I wanted to shout out Gradients for their V5 going live too.
Hey, if you're a subnet owner and you push updates to Twitter and the Discord, you will get covered on the TAO Talk show. But the
especially
thing
with
is,
these nice banners, dude.
You have to tell us what you're doing in order for us to cover it. So if you're not getting covered, it's because you're not posting stuff and you're not explaining to the community what you're building. So there's kind of like a PSA to all subnet owners.
Brody's speaking from the heart because he has to go through every week.
Yeah, I go through I am speaking from the heart because I get pinged about things and it's like, hey, you didn't include this. And it was like a Discord message in like size 11 font and like just a big block of paragraph. And I'm like, well, I scrolled past it on accident. So yes, but
could be loud.
Post your stuff, post blogs.
There's over 100 subnets.
I read everything. So yeah, there's too many subnets, 128 to be perfect. Too many to be perfect.
Unacceptable, Brody. Unacceptable.
Yeah, I know. I am an organic reasoning engine. I'm not an LLM. So I make mistakes.
Yeah, I wanted to shout out Targon actually about their Targon order book. I think one of these kind of fell under the radar, I thought. They're basically just creating a market to naturally find the price for these GPUs. So I haven't seen this elsewhere. Like you can have folks bidding to like outcompete other people on their GPUs. So I think it's a really cool way to organize it over on
Yeah, this is the direction I think compute is headed. I mean, compute feels like a pure play commodity at this point. There's going to be a lot of cool, I think, derivative products created around compute, such as futures, contracts, which that's a whole rabbit hole if you want to explore it. There's a good podcast on that alone, is the financialization of compute. And I think like BitTensor specifically is really well positioned for this world where disparate computing devices are better coordinated through a crypto economic incentive. And I think that that's like the main value proposition of BitTensor, is this concept of distributed compute. And Targon, also shout out to them, announced their raise this morning, actually.
Yeah,
so
big raise.
Raised 10.5 from OSS, a couple people from Google, Jake Inala from the Open Tensor Foundation, and Shopify co-founder, I believe, if not an OG member of Shopify. So yeah, fellow Canadians on the cap table.
Love
a
it.
lot of Canadians in BitTensor, man.
Yeah,
a lot of Canadians.
Per capita
That's
might be the
exciting
most
news, though.
Canadian project.
Probably. It's a shame because TAO won't be considered in the World Liberty Financial Treasury. So only American made cryptocurrencies in Tron and TRX for some reason is the only exception.
I don't know. I heard Satoshi's Canadian.
Really?
That's a new one.
Probably. Well, the guy who put his transferred his Bitcoin, his $8 billion in Bitcoin, transferred it to Galaxy. So maybe there's a relationship there. Yeah, Galaxy, little side tangent, but Galaxy sold $8 billion worth of Bitcoin last week. Not their own Bitcoin, but someone that was Satoshi era OG wallet transferred it to Galaxy to be sold OTC. So hey, maybe the Bitcoin core team is Canadian. Who knows?
Love it, man.
We'll start that conspiracy theory. Let's put out some tweets. Yeah.
Even more reasons to put more tariffs on Canada.
They can afford it at this point. Yeah, man. This is the reason why we brought you guys on the show. XTao going public. I'll leave the floor to you. Do you want to give like a brief origin story? Yeah, just what is XTao and why are you guys excited about it?
Yeah. So I guess the origin story, after WonderFi, which was my last company, I took a bit of time off and honestly was just ready for a little bit of a breather from crypto. And then I didn't get that much time. I actually got connected with Ken through a mutual friend, and he was going down the BitTensor rabbit hole and decided to drag me down with him. And just really kind of got TAO pilled very quickly. And I started mining very unsuccessfully, but it was just kind of that like just that seeing that incentive in action and like how much of my time, like the fact that I was planning on taking time off and then I'm like staying up till 6 a.m. mining, and like I'm like, okay, this obviously works. Whatever's happening here, so something works. And then and then we just kept talking. Obviously saw the opportunity to build a subnet, and that's where BitMind started. And as we got BitMind up and running, I just kept thinking back to 2016. I'm dating myself, but 2016, 2017, and seeing, one of my mentors, Sean Clark, was the founder and CEO of Hut 8, and it was one of the first Bitcoin mining companies. And I just remember seeing how that gave non-crypto people a way to interact with Bitcoin that they didn't have before. It was a business model. It was a sound business model. It was backed by high growth asset, and that just attracted so much capital. Like none of the investors I don't want to say none, but not many of the investors in Hut 8, especially in the early days, were crypto people. It was, you know, institutional investors. It was like high growth, like public market investors. And so I saw, you know, Ken and I kept talking about that, and I just saw that opportunity to do that for BitTensor, and so we started working on XTao in October, November last year, and the goal was to really create a public BitTensor validator, and you know, it's evolved a bit. Like we're in the process of you know, building and registering a validator, and I think that holding a lot of TAO also is an important point, because you know, I think having like pure play exposure for a public market investor to you know, to get through XTao is pretty critical. I think there's like Ken said, there's, you know, there's not a lot of AI opportunities for the average investor, and so I think this kind of diversified AI exposure is really critical. So that's one. Decentralized AI, there, you know, there really isn't anything as well. And then for those that are like, you know, understand and appreciate BitTensor, I think it's you know, that's another target for us. So that's a bit of the background. We launched it last week, and we hold a lot of TAO, which we'll be kind of sharing the exact numbers, but I believe we're the largest public company in terms of TAO holdings, and we have very aggressive plans to continue growing. And I think the thing that excites me the most about it is that there's lots of opportunities for us to like not just bring value to BitTensor through buying TAO, but I think there's a lot more that we can do to kind of build within the ecosystem and grow it that way. So yeah, that's a bit of background. Happy to dive in anywhere else.
Yeah, maybe because when Karia and I were working on Bitmind, Karia was kind of like our, you know, COO, head of ops, legal, and one that was extremely helpful. I think when you're spinning up a company, not having to like hire external counsel for all of your legal questions, one, saves you a ton of money, but two, is just like you get information so much faster, and having the right legal and corporate structure, I think, is extremely, extremely important, especially as you grow and get larger. But when Karia started talking about this idea, it felt like a no-brainer. You know, this was before the boom of these holding companies were happening over the past 2 months. But I think my perspective was, you know, I have no idea how to do this. You know, I have no experience in the public markets, et cetera. But then for Kare, he's done this twice. He was, you know, had involvement and an understanding of Hut 8 going public. His last company, WonderFi, went public and sold to Robinhood, and it was a successful exit. And it was just like, okay, hey, when you're leading a company, your job, a big component of your job is resource allocation. And this just felt like such an amazing opportunity where Karia's background and expertise, along with the experience that he's had in BitTensor, really made it a no-brainer. And so then, we started working on it, going through the regulatory and the organizational fundraising process, et cetera, that eventually got us to where we're at today.
That's awesome, and great story too, Karia, and also amazing context there as well, Ken. We were talking about this, Ken, a couple of days ago, where we were talking about the differences between all of these digital asset treasury vehicles and the nuances between structuring them, how your strategy and your approach differs from TAOX or Obolong and Safellow and so forth. So I'd love if one of you guys could, add a little bit of color into how XTao's capital structure differentiates from a lot of the other existing alternatives on the market.
Yeah, for sure. I can take that. So I think that, a lot of first, just to be clear, I love all of the pipe strategies that I like. I think it's honestly really cool. Just, I'm a corporate structuring, financing, legal nerd, and just seeing the first pipes happen was really incredible, because that there hasn't really been that type of a structure before. Like, it's a new structure. What happened with like SBET, for example, where it's this NASDAQ, operating company, or you call it you call it a shell, but it has an ongoing business. It's like $5 to $10 million market cap. And then you have an investor group that comes in and says, we want to put, $450 million into this company. You need to actually keep running your operating business of like this betting business, or this like solar business, or whatever it might be. For regulatory reasons, you can't have a change of control, or change of business, I should say. And so all this capital comes in, and it's basically ring fenced under this asset management agreement, that says, this is now our crypto strategy. We're still running this existing business, and like meeting all our requirements under that, but the 99% of the capital that's coming in is just going to be managed under this asset management agreement and allocated to Bitcoin or ETH or Solana. And we're going to appoint someone to the board, and we're going to put an officer in, and really, so you kind of like have this, it's a really interesting structure, but it made it so these companies could raise so much money so quickly. And I'm referring to like SBET, Upexi. We're seeing a bunch of others pop up, but really interesting structure. I think there are definitely some downsides to that structure. Obviously, like the governance is one where you have like a legacy board that still has control over the company, and like a legacy capital structure and all that. I think if the raise is big enough, the legacy capital structure doesn't matter as much, because the proportion of the new investor shares is just so large relative to like what's there. But I think there's like potentially governance issues that come up. There's potentially regulatory issues. Like, we'll see how it all plays out, but it's a very new structure. I think there's also so that's kind of my comment on the pipes. And then with XTao, what we did was different. It's a reverse merger where basically it allows us to control the whole capital structure and have like a purpose-built company for BitTensor. So there's no like, effectively, this is a new entity, and we know where all the shares are. We have our board that's constructed includes like people like Ken, who are building in the BitTensor ecosystem. And I think that is that's something that excites me, because I think it's it just creates a lot more alignment, and then from like a pure numbers and capital structure perspective, it's just a lot cleaner. Whereas I think with other companies in the space, some of the capital structures have so many dilutive instruments that I think people don't really understand necessarily, or some of the investing public doesn't really understand that, if you have like a market cap of say $1 million, but your fully diluted is like 6 million, and all of the instruments that get you there are like deep in the money, then that's a big issue. Whereas with something that is kind of new and has a very thoughtful capital structure, I think there's a lot of advantages to that when you're doing a treasury strategy, but then also just like building a business like we are.
Yeah, and I think one point that Kara brought up was like essentially the governance of these different strategies. And when we started talking about this, we've talked about it before as well on this call, just like the complexity of BitTensor, but wanting to run a validator, wanting to be able to make alpha token investments when the time comes about, and being like really wanting to contribute to the ecosystem as well. And when you have a governance structure where some of the leaders of the company might not understand BitTensor that well, I thought that potentially could be a very complicated process of trying to
That's
convince them on some strategies that we were trying to, implement, maybe in the future. And
no,
I thought
that's
a big advantage.
that's such a good point, Ken. Sorry to kind of because I also think you remind me of something, which is that with the if you have a strategy like we've described and a capital structure like we've described with something like Bitcoin, it is so widely adopted and accepted and less volatile now. And so I don't think you have the potential of a 90% drawdown with Bitcoin at this point. Whereas with altcoins and like with BitTensor, you potentially do. And so I think if you're using that structure where you have this board, like Ken said, that doesn't understand what BitTensor is, they're just signing off on a transaction because they're like, oh, there's money on the table, then it's going to create a lot of issues in the next downturn, like the next bear market. And so we really wanted to build XTao so that, I've been through multiple bear markets in the public markets in crypto, and I've had, companies that have just barely survived. And so it's really, I think that's such a critical point is making sure that it can last, and we come out the other side. That's how we're built. That's how we're really building this.
Yeah, and how do you think about reflexivity, especially when you have like an asset treasury like that's composed of tau and something so volatile? I know people are always worried about these digital asset treasuries and the unwinding that might happen. How do you think about that when you look at XTao? I know it's a very different structure from a lot of those high levered type of vehicles, but if you could just go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So with that, we are less concerned about it because at least for us, because we're maintaining enough cash that if there is a massive downturn, we don't have to sell any TAO. And it's also it's a very lean operation. We haven't inherited like a, $4, $5, $6 million burn, like most pipes have. And so I think that's really critical because, yeah, if TAO draws down to, $80 and, our revenue goes down accordingly, we can still break even and not have to tap into like cash balance to do that. So that's really, to me, it's like, it's that simple, and it's easier said than done because obviously like when the market's hot, you just want to throw all your money in. But I think it's just kind of prudent capital management allows you to do that. And in my view, it won't make a major difference if we hold 5% less TAO, but it'll make a huge difference if we don't have enough cash to to keep going in a major down market. So we've set this up so that we will never have to sell TAO, and we can just we can sustain ourselves regardless of the market conditions.
Yeah, plus we had this question come through from William about, revenue from validation, and validator revenue is going to be like TAO denominated, right? So curious how you think about that as far as like revenues concerned and paying costs of business.
Yeah. So don't have any specific numbers around that. I think the way that I'm thinking about the revenue from the validator business is that, and actually would love both of your and Ken's feedback on this as well. Obviously, Ken and I have talked about this at length, but I guess my view is BitTensor is rapidly growing. A lot of people in the BitTensor ecosystem are spending a lot of time in the ecosystem and really know many of the ins and outs, who's running validators, who the different teams are. You've met a lot of the people, and so I think when you're making decisions around who to stake to from a validator perspective, you have a lot of knowledge, and a lot of existing TAO holders have that knowledge. I think as the ecosystem grows, if it's successful in growing, you're going to have people that don't have the time or don't have that knowledge and relationships to know who the different teams are and have that level of trust. And so I think that having a publicly traded validator that is audited, that you can see financials, all that stuff, will be helpful as BitTensor draws in more of a wider group. of adopters. And so from that standpoint, I think like, yeah, our job is really kind of growing that profile and really growing it with obviously we have a lot of TAO holders and BitTensor maxis in our that came in our round and that are supportive of XTao, but really like our job is not that. Our job is bringing in new people into XTao and convincing them on why BitTensor is going to be a top 3 crypto asset, and then making them feel a level of trust and conviction around our validator. So that's sort of how we're looking at growing it. But yeah, don't have any specific kind of revenue numbers around it yet.
Love that, man. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Just want to, any other closing thoughts on that before we get into the last round of segments here? Good deal, man. Well, wanted to close off with fill in the blank. Just first thing that comes to mind, give you a scenario, you guys fill in the blank. Number 1, this is only the beginning for X with BitTensor. Any thoughts?
Adoption.
Ooh, only from here, man.
I like that one.
I like that one too.
I was going to say something that was facetious, but I've decided I'm not. So.
No, let's hear it.
I would say this is only the beginning for down-only price action. I'm kidding. No, I think on subnet, some of subnet tokens specifically, I think like it's got to be bottoming. It's got to be. But every time I've said that, it's gone a little bit lower. So maybe I need to stop saying that entirely.
Yeah, man. Do you have to capitulate so we can finally go up?
No, I will never capitulate.
Awesome. Number 2, a team I haven't met yet but want to is blank. Ken, any review?
Yeah, I think
I've probably met everybody, but
I want to meet the quantum guys.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a great one.
I want to talk to the Ridges guys after that novelty search too. I haven't done that yet.
They're cool. I actually met them. I met them when they were. I think they started off as Agent TAO.
Yeah.
Like way back in the day. It took them a little bit to get up and running, but yeah, I think really capable team. Shaq's awesome.
Awesome, dude. And last one, give it a year and blank will be cranking out the revenue.
These inference subnets.
Yeah.
Those ones. I just think it's like the cleanest business model and delivery of value.
It's the simplest, right?
To wider, AI use cases and so forth. And I think it's set up to experience the most amount of demand out the rip. So
I think we're already seeing it, right? With Chutes.
Yeah, right.
Targon's getting some too.
Right.
Only the beginning, man. Love it.
Beginning.
Karya, Ken, really appreciate you guys joining us today. Where should folks go if they want to learn more about what you guys are working on?
XTao is xtao.co.
There you go. Ken?
So check us out there.
Yeah, we're like, I think it's like XTao _ HQ on X. Follow Karya and I's. My Twitter handle is Ken John Miyachi. Karya's it's on a screen, Samaru00. And then we'll be posting news. Karya's on the media tour right now, so I think you'll be seeing more of his face. But definitely feel free to reach out, and would love to talk to any folks.
Yeah, I love the media junket you guys are on. It's definitely necessary. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the TAO Times newsletter if you want an even deeper dive into this week's updates. We'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Sweet.
Thanks, guys.
Later.
Thanks, guys.
Great to see you.
Appreciate it, guys.